General Hospital spoilers for Thursday, August 21st, suggest that Drew Kane's scheme fails, and Nina Reeves silences Ava Jerome. Molly Lansing Davis will also have a question for Cody Bell. So let's talk about all the excitement. For starters, Stella Henry will believe Drew won this time, and she will get Curtis Ashford to accept it. Of course, Curtis will not allow Drew get away with starting the inquiry into Stella's insurance fraud, so he will be prepared to exact revenge. Martin Gray will offer Drew a deal. If Drew discontinues the investigation, Martin will be willing to sign the statement against Michael Corinthos. Drew appears to be either unwilling or unable to stop what he has started with Stella, thus he will be out of luck in the assault case. The charges will not stand without Martin's witness testimony, thus Michael and Sonny Corinthos will win. Adia Justine Turner will inform Sonny that this should be fine as they await the conclusion of the problem with Martin and Drew. It will appear that Justine enjoys watching Drew squirm and fail to get his way. Drew will eventually lose Martin's support, and he will be furious since he will be unable to arrest Michael as planned. Tracy Quartermaine will then inform Brooklyn Quartermaine that she must be present or she will never forgive herself. Tracy, as always, will be correct, whether it's about Maxie Jones or Giovanni Gio Palmieri. Molly will approach Cody with a smile and a query requiring his knowledge. Molly may have a cowboy-related question for her novel, but she will quickly realize Cody is angry. Cody will undoubtedly speak up about Maxie's medical issues and receive some support. Molly may realize something on Thursday's episode, and she may discover that she still has feelings for Cody despite her efforts to suppress them. Meanwhile, Rick Lansing will catch up with Elizabeth Baldwin, which will result in some romantic moments by the Metro Court pool. "What have I done for you?" Rick inquires in Thursday's JH teaser video. Liz may find a way to praise Rick, while also giving Ava a chance to spot them together. On Thursday's show, Ava will also discover some intriguing information, but Nina will insist that she swear to keep whatever she discovers to herself. Ava already understands Nina's beliefs that Willow Tate is Daisy Gilmore's stalker, so her finding must be something else. It's likely that Ava will receive updates on something else related to Willow, but Nina could also be trying to save Ava from another round of Rick drama. Finally, Lulu Spencer and Liesl Albrecht will explore their turbulent history, but they may be able to build on their previous progress. According to General Hospital teasers, Maxie's health situation will bring further more unpleasant blows, as some poison proof may be brewing. General Hospital teasers indicate that a preview clip has been posted for Thursday, August 21st, 2025. It depicts Martin Gray standing up to Drew Kane. Ava Jerome appears to be torn between two moral choices. Molly Lansing Davis also seeks Cody Bell's expertise. Continue reading to learn more about what will happen in today's episode of ABC soap drama. Stella Henry hopeless. Let us begin with Stella Henry, who sought legal help from Alexis Davis. However, it appears like the cards are stacked against the woman. In the trailer for today's episode, Stella tells Curtis Ashford that Drew won this time. Read more. Find out what occurred on the last episode of G.H. Martin Gray's Leverage. Meanwhile, Martin has recently discovered that Drew is to blame for Stella's legal dilemma. The lawyer has acquired a soft place for Stella after she assisted him with the insurance matter. So Drew's actions towards Stella are a massive slap in the face to Martin. Martin informs Drew that he will sign the police statement only if Drew discontinues the probe into Stella. Meanwhile, Justine Turner and Sonny Corinthos face off again. The ADA informs the mafia boss. This should be good. Tracy Quartermaine's warning. According to General Hospital spoilers for Thursday, August 21st, Tracy Quartermaine issues a desperate warning in the preview clip. The matriarch warns Brooklyn Quartermaine that she must be present or she will never forgive herself. Read this. General Hospital spoilers. Colette tries to murder Carly. Thursday, August 21st, 2025. There will also be a scene in which Molly turns to Cody for assistance. Meanwhile, Nina Reeves asks Ava to keep this information to herself. When Ava is urged not to tell anyone, she reacts with shock. This could test her devotion as well as their friendship. Plus, Rick Lansing receives a guest. Now we know Nina and Rick will meet later this week. Nina must have some idea of what she can do to help Willow. I am curious whether this new plot has anything to do with what Carly Spencer said to her during the pool incident. Maxie Jones' heart attack may possibly progress. The young woman has yet to awaken, Therefore she may remain comatose for some time. Fans should not be concerned though. Storms has stated that she expects to return before the end of the year after settling in Tennessee. Which narrative are you most looking forward to witnessing on Thursday, August 21, 2025? Share your opinions in the comments area below. Remember to keep watching ABC soap operas to see what happens next. The sun hung low over Port Charles, creating a golden haze across the waterfront as sailboats gently bounced against the wharf. Drew Cain stood at the edge of the pier, his hands deep in the pockets of his navy blazer, his mouth tense with frustration. His carefully planned strategy, which had taken weeks to develop, had fallen apart in hours. It was supposed to be simple. Acquire the Quartermain family's support to advance his current business venture, a software firm aiming at transforming medical diagnostics, through the board. He'd spent countless nights studying over predictions, perfecting his pitch, and negotiating the maze of egos that comprised the Quartermain dynasty. But today on the family's huge estate his pitch fell flat. Monica, typically his staunchest supporter, had paused, her eyes flashing with doubt as she questioned the financial hazards. Ned, ever the skeptic, had ripped into the idea with a flurry of probing questions that Drew couldn't fully address. Even Brooke Lynn, who had offered her support, had backtracked, citing market saturation. The room became colder with each statement, and by the end, Drew felt the weight of their collective disdain like a physical blow. He kicked a loose rock into the water and watched it sink below the surface. The Quartermains were more than simply a family. They were a machine that devoured ambition and spit out failure if you didn't play their game exactly. Drew had played it as well as he could, using his charisma, military discipline, and true belief in the idea. But that wasn't enough. He overestimated the family's aversion to change, their preference for tradition over innovation. As he peered out at the horizon, he had a sour thought. Perhaps he wasn't one of them after all. A transplant, a soldier-turned-entrepreneur, is constantly attempting to prove his place in their world of old money and old grudges. Nina Reeves sat behind her glass-top desk at Crimson Magazine's sleek, modern headquarters across town, her manicured nails tapping rapidly against a stack of manuscripts. The room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioner and the occasional rustle of papers as her aide darted in and out. Nina's gaze was fixated on Ava Jerome, who stood in front of her with her arms crossed and a defiant expression. Ava had come to Crimson with an offer, which Nina had rejected before Ava could finish her sentence. The concept was bold, too bold. Ava intended to utilize Crimson's platform to launch a tell-all series about her life, a no-holds-barred exposé that would name names, settle scores, and in Ava's words, set the record straight. Nina had listened for precisely 30 seconds before raising a hand to quiet her. Nina remarked, "Ava, you know I respect your flair for drama," with a cold but steely tone. "However, Crimson is not your personal soapbox. You wish to air your dirty clothes? Write a book. Hire a ghostwriter. But this magazine is about fashion, culture, and aspiration, not your vendettas." Ava's brows narrowed, her lips parted as if to argue, but Nina leaned forward, her gaze fixed. "Don't," she replied, interrupting Ava before she could speak. "I've made a decision. If you press this, you will find yourself on the outs with this town." Again. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ava was no stranger to ostracism in Port Charles, but Nina wielded her power with precision and lethal effect. Nina had no intention of attaching Ava's past, her scandals, plots, and complicated relationships, to Crimson's brand. Ava remained there for a time, her posture tight, her eyes filled with rage and calculation. Nina could almost feel the gears working in Ava's thoughts, as she considered whether to fight or withdraw. Finally, Ava gave a harsh nod, whirled around, and rushed out of the office, her heels tapping hard on the glossy floor. Nina breathed and leaned back in her chair. She had won this round, but she knew Ava too well to think it was over. Ava did not just let things go. She simmered, planned, and waited. Nina made a mental note to keep an eye on her so Crimson's reputation remained unblemished. The magazine was her empire, built from the ground up, and she wouldn't let Ava's need for vengeance bring it down. Meanwhile, in the Metro Court, Molly Lansing Davis sat across from Cody Bell in a quiet area of the hotel's restaurant, her coffee unfinished and getting cold. The bustle of conversation from surrounding tables faded into the background as Molly's gaze focused on Cody's face, searching for answers she wasn't certain she wanted. Cody, with his easy grin and cowboy swagger, had long puzzled her, a man who seemed to balance reckless appeal and guarded concealment. They'd grown close over the last few months, thanks to shared moments at the stables, where Cody's ability with horses pleased her and her keen wit kept him on his toes. Molly had recently noticed cracks in his laid-back persona, such as when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes or when he dodged a question with an overly planned joke. "Cody," she continued, her voice low but forceful, "what's up with you? And don't give me the ah shucks act. I'm not buying it anymore." She leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, her eyes fixed. Cody shifted in his seat, his fingers lightly tapping the side of his glass. For a minute, he appeared to be about to deflect again, but something in Molly's expression, maybe genuine care, perhaps calm strength, made him stop. "It's complicated," he finally said, his voice softer than normal. "I haven't shared certain information with anyone. Not even you." He averted his gaze, focusing on the flickering candle between them. Molly waited, giving him room, but her thoughts were racing. She'd heard rumors about Cody's past, including a tie to the Quartermaines, which he refused to discuss. She'd never pushed, always respected his boundaries, but now they felt like walls, and she wanted to know what was on the other side. "Complicated, how?" she pressed, her voice calm yet persistent. "Cody, I am your friend. You can trust me. Whatever it is, I'm not going to judge you." The words were heavy, a promise she wasn't sure she could make if the truth was as complicated as she imagined. Cody's background was a shadow that followed him, and Molly had witnessed enough of Port Charles's secrets to know that shadows frequently conceal things that may shatter you. Cody met her gaze, and she had a fleeting hope that he would open up. But then he shook his head, a slight smile forming on his lips. "You're too good for this town, Molly," he continued, his tone tinged with remorse. "Let's just say I have a few things to work out. When I do, you'll be the first to know." He reached for his glass and took a long swallow, and Molly realized the conversation was over, for the moment. She sat back, frustrated and concerned. Cody was drifting away, not physically but emotionally, and she didn't know how to bring him back. Drew was still deep in concentration on the dock when his phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. Carly sent a brief text message. "I heard about the meeting. You okay?" Drew's lips twitched, a small smile piercing through his irritation. Carly had a knack of breaking through the noise, understanding when he needed her without having to say anything. He quickly texted a response, "Not great, but I'll survive," and returned the phone to his pocket. Carly was his anchor, but she couldn't solve this. The Quartermaines had made their position clear, and Drew wasn't sure he had the stamina to battle them again. Perhaps it was time to reconsider his strategy, to find another method to leave his mark. After all, Port Charles was a place that valued second chances, but it also demanded that you pay for them in blood. Nina, meantime, was already preparing for her next assault. She'd spent the afternoon taking calls from advertisers, calming down concerns about a recent article that had ruffled feathers in the fashion industry. Crimson was her pride and pleasure, but it was also a tightrope that she navigated with skill and determination. Ava's visit had been an unpleasant distraction, a reminder that Port Charles was never lacking in drama. As she evaluated the new layout for the fall edition, her mind returned to Ava's proposal. The arrogance of it still wounded Nina. Using Crimson as a weapon to settle personal scores was a threshold Nina refused to cross. However, she couldn't ignore the notion that Ava wasn't finished. A storm was brewing, and Nina needed to be prepared when it hit. Molly threw her coffee aside and stood, her thoughts still focused on Cody. She had always taken pleasure in her ability to read people and see past their masks in this town of secrets and lies. But Cody was different. He was not like the polished schemer she encountered in court or the calculated players that comprised Port Charles's elite. He was raw, unpolished, and inexplicably elusive. As she stepped out into the evening air, she silently resolved to keep trying, to discover the truth about Cody Bell. She wasn't sure why it mattered so much, but it did. The night fell over Port Charles, and the city's lights twinkled against the darkening sky. Drew, Nina, and Molly were all fighting their own battles, and their paths would cross in unexpected ways. Drew's failure at the Quartermain estate was disappointing, but it was not the end. Nina's win over Ava was only a battle in a war that would never fully end. And Molly's queries concerning Cody were only the beginning of a thread that may reveal secrets deeper than any of them could conceive. Nothing in Port Charles remained buried for long, and the truth, when revealed, would change everything. The waterfront was silent now, except for the steady lapping of waves against the docks. Drew lingered a bit longer before turning and walking away, his thoughts already shifting to his next action. Nina closed her office for the night, the illumination of her desk lamp diminishing as she secured the door. Molly drove home, her mind a jumble of uncertainty and determination. And somewhere in the city's shadows, Cody Bell kept his secrets, aware that the clock was ticking until they caught up with him. Martin reclined back in his chair, the office's dim lighting casting lengthy shadows on his desk. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the glossy wood, betraying his placid demeanor. Drew sat rigidly across from him, his jaw tightened, his gaze drawn to the stack of papers Martin had slid toward him an hour before. Those documents included secrets, financial records, emails, and a few damning photos that may jeopardize Drew's carefully cultivated image. Martin did not need to say much because the evidence spoke for itself. He'd spent months gathering material, putting together the puzzle of Drew's double dealings and subtle betrayals of the corporation for which they both worked. Drew felt he was invincible, the firm's golden boy, but Martin had always seen through the charm, the easy grins, and Drew's politician-like conversational style. Martin now had the upper hand, and the weight of his authority was intoxicating. Martin told himself it wasn't personal, but the deception seemed flimsy even to him. Drew had crossed him years before, a subtle but calculated snub during a promotion cycle that cost Martin a shot at the corner office. That moment had festered into a subtle bitterness that deepened with each of Drew's accomplishments. This wasn't really revenge. Rather, Martin presented it as justice. The record served as leverage, forcing Drew to take a step back, accept his mistakes, or perhaps depart completely. Martin had not made a decision yet. He wanted Drew to sweat, feel the walls close in, and experience what it was like to lose control. Martin had kept the talk quick, his voice low and measured as he lay out the terms. Comply or the papers will be made public. Drew's silence was his only response, but the dread in his eyes was enough for the moment. Across town, Ava stood in her little apartment, staring at the phone she held. The screen gleamed with a text from her sister, a cryptic message that hinted at danger without providing specifics. Ava's chest tightened. She was used to bailing out her sister, late-night calls, unexpected situations, promises to never do it again that were never kept. But something felt odd. The ambiguity of the message, the lack of a direct plea, made her nervous. Ava had her own troubles to deal with, including a job that barely covered the bills, a landlord who was constantly hovering over her, and a relationship that was disintegrating at the edges. She didn't have the energy to play savior again, but the prospect of ignoring the message made her stomach turn. What if the situation was serious? What if her sister was really in danger? Ava paced the room, her footfall muffled by the worn rug and her mind racing with scenarios. She might call and demand answers, but that may make everything worse. She might dismiss it, hoping it was nothing, but the guilt would gnaw away at her. Or she could dive in like she always does, and risk being dragged under by her sister's pandemonium. The weight of the decision pressed against her like an old ache. Ava had always been the responsible one, the one who cleaned up messes and kept things together when others broke apart. However, she was exhausted, bone-deep tired, and the prospect of another crisis made her want to shout. She slid onto the couch, the springs squeaking beneath her weight, and looked up at the ceiling. The fissures in the plaster seemed to mimic the fractures in her life, which started small but grew with time. She wanted to be free of it, to walk away and let someone else bear the load for once. But family was family, and Ava knew she would never abandon them totally. She typed up a response, her fingers trembling over the keys, and clicked send. "What's going on? Call me." The wait for a response felt like a sentence, with each passing minute making her nerves weaker. Meanwhile, Molly sat in the corner of a coffee shop, her hands curled around a long cold mug. She did not notice. Her gaze was riveted on the door, watching each individual who entered, hoping it was Cody. She needed him, his calm logic and manner of making sense of things when her life felt out of control. Molly's life has recently been a succession of missteps. A failed business venture, a falling out with her best friend, and now a looming deadline for a project she was far from ready to complete. Cody was the only one who could calm her down, look at her mess and see a way out. He had a talent for breaking through the noise and seeing practical paths forward, when all she saw was pandemonium. But Cody wasn't responding to her texts, and the stillness was deafening. Molly checked her phone again, her thumb going over the previous conversation. It had been light and taunting, the type of banter that made her chuckle. But now it felt like a lifeline she couldn't grasp. She wondered if she had pressed too hard or requested too much. Cody had his own life and troubles, and Molly was aware of how intense she could be. She didn't want to rely so much on him, but he was stable in a way she wasn't, and that stability was intoxicating. The coffee shop door swung open, and her pulse raced, only to fall when she realized it wasn't him. She took a sip of cold coffee, grimacing, and attempted to concentrate. The project's deadline was tomorrow, and she had nothing useful. Her customer expected genius, but all she had was a mess of ideas that refused to crystallize. Without Cody's guidance, she felt lost, like a ship without a rudder. She entered another sentence, deleted it, and then typed it again. "Hey, I really need to talk. You free?" She pressed send and held her breath. Back in the office, Martin watched Drew collect his belongings, his motions slow and methodical, as if he might postpone the inevitable. Martin didn't gloat, he wasn't that type of man, but there was a quiet enjoyment in watching Drew's confidence crumble. The power dynamic had shifted, and Martin felt it with every fiber of his being. He had no idea what Drew would do next, whether he would fight or fold, but Martin was prepared for either. He had prepared for this moment, anticipating every countermove. The papers were, of course, copies. The originals were secure, hidden away where no one could get them. Martin was no idiot. He knew Drew was astute, savvy, and not afraid to play dirty. But Martin had the advantage, and he planned to retain it. Ava's phone rang, jolting her out of her thoughts. It was her sister, but the message was short and evasive. "I can't talk right now. I'll explain later," Ava said, suppressing her annoyance. She couldn't compel her sister to tell the truth just yet. She stood up, grabbed her keys, and walked toward the door. If her sister did not come to her, she would go to her sister. It was probably a poor decision, but staying still was not an option. Ava needed answers, to know that this wasn't going to be another calamity for her to mend. As she stepped into the night, the city's hum felt like a heartbeat, matching the pace of her dread. Molly's phone remained silent, and the coffee shop felt smaller, with the walls closing in. She packed up her laptop, her motions jerky, and abandoned the cold coffee behind. Cody was not arriving, and she couldn't wait any longer. She'd have to face the deadline alone, piecing together something from the shards of her thoughts. It wouldn't be ideal, but it would be something. As she went onto the street, the cool air touched her face, focusing her attention. She didn't really need Cody. She could do it. She had to. Martin remained late, and now the office is empty except for him. He opened the drawer containing a bottle of whiskey, poured a small glass, and hoisted it into the empty room. A toast to control, leverage, and the game that he was winning. Ava drove through the city, her hands firm on the steering wheel, pursuing a truth she wasn't sure she wanted to discover. Molly headed home, her mind racing with half-formed plans and anxious to show she could stand on her own. 3 lives entwined in their own challenges, each battling to hold on, break free, and find a path forward.